So with this video, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about the latest rumors or news for the Saw franchise and the next film in the series. Let's jump right into it. Hey YouTubers, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. So today I'm going to be talking about a potential leak for Saw 9 that hit Reddit just a couple of days ago and is starting to gain a little bit of traction amongst the Saw community. Shout out to Luke at PhotoshopHorroz on Twitter. The guy makes some fantastic, amazing Saw creation posters for Saw 9 and just the franchise in general. So go check him out. His link will be in the description section below. If you can see on the screen here, this is what he sent me. The idea that we have at least a little bit of news as to what Saw 9 is going to be titled and when it's going to start filming and when we're going to start hearing news from the project. So with all of that being said, I just wanted to jump into what is said here from the user Vince360. And one thing I want to make very clear before I get started here, I don't think that this guy is lying. I'm not sure what he knows, what he's working with, whether he's making up stuff to garner hype or anything else like that. A lot of the stuff here seems pretty reasonable with the stuff that I've heard through the grapevine over the last couple months. There's stuff I have problems with and stuff I want to talk about, and maybe even things I want to tell you that I've been hearing that are kind of semi-secret news that I probably shouldn't, but let's just jump right into it. He says, and I quote, "Saw 9 will begin filming in Toronto this year. After a year-long delay, I hear Twisted is finally ready to proceed with pre-production on Saw 9, and they're aiming to finally begin location scouting in a couple of months. You should start hearing whispers about it then. And given production start is currently aiming for late September, I expect them to start publicly acknowledging it in July." As for the working title they're going with, well, you see, after much debate and talk of giving it a fresh new title again, they're currently just planning on going into production under the mysterious working title Saw 9. That's all we really have from Vincent360, and I have to say, just first and foremost, if all of this ends up being completely truthful, this is what we start hearing about in the next couple months, and this is the hype train starting for Saw 9, then all the power to him. I think everyone should, at that point, we can sit there and be like, yeah, that guy was right. We should have listened to him. And that's the thing, that got us really excited. That was the first push into the next phase of excitement for this franchise. I think that's totally fine. The problem here is a lot of things make sense and a lot of things don't make sense based on what I know. First and foremost, the last thing that we heard from the Saw franchise was way back in April of 2018 when we heard that Josh and Pete were being hired to come back and pen the sequel. Of course, if you follow Josh on Twitter, it's clear that he has a lot of ideas, or at least they both had a lot of ideas for what the Saw franchise would be. The Spirig brothers came out and said there's a lot of clues and hints at what Saw 9 could possibly be within Jigsaw itself, and I've talked about it in several videos about all the things that they can pick up on and all the mysterious and awesome concepts that they can use within the 9th film of the franchise. There's a lot to work with there, and I'm very excited. The one thing here is, while I believe that a September start date in production in Toronto for a 2020, potentially October 2020 release for this film seems fairly reasonable and something I'm sure Lionsgate and Twisted Pictures are both trying to aim for and want this film to succeed at. Because let's be clear, whether this news ends up being true or not, Lionsgate and Twisted Pictures are indeed spending money and trying to develop the next film in the Saw franchise. The last one made over $100 million worldwide, and as I've talked about in other videos and has been widely reported, Lionsgate owns the Saw franchise. I mean, that's one of the things that they've owned. They have it in their staple. It's one of the biggest things in their library. There's no red tape. There's no other relationship or anything that they have to share profits with. They go out and they sell this to distributors across the world to take and market and distribute across the world for a price. This film, this last film in the franchise that cost $10 million, made a profit before it even hit theaters. It was widely reported that this last movie was sold to the tune of $10 million or more before it hit theaters for Lionsgate, that $100 million or whatever they saw that $100 million was gravy after advertisement and distribution costs and all this other stuff. That's insane. This franchise totaling well under $250 million to produce, advertise, distribute across the world and everything is nearing $1 billion. For the 9th film, they only need around $24 million in order to hit that mark, and that's something that they're going to want to do. It's one of the reasons we're definitely getting a 9th film in the Saw franchise. It's still incredibly profitable. The problem I'm having with this information is the name concept. One of the reasons they went with Jigsaw for the 8th film in the franchise is they wanted to sell this property across the world into a new generation that didn't have any relationship with the original Saw franchise. Saw, for the most part, as I've talked on other videos and on Twitter and just in general, the Saw franchise has an image problem. People look at it in one way or another. They think it's just nothing but torture porn because it started that wave of just terrible films, or at least half a decade of terrible horror ripoffs that were trying to emulate what Saw was trying to do to a lesser degree or lesser quality. That way, a lot of people saw those other films. Saw started those other films, or at least gave rise to them. Saw is a terrible film. Everyone hates this, and we shouldn't give it any real attention. They were trying to get away from that stigma, and one of the reasons they didn't name Jigsaw Saw 8. In fact, they even had a working title through the production of Jigsaw, which was just Saw Legacy. That, to me, is one of the reasons I cannot believe them doing Saw 9 as the legitimate title for this movie. In fact, I can see it, at least in some degree, that's going to be the working title that they use throughout production just to kind of do what they need to do. If you go back and look at Jigsaw, especially when you get to the special features of that movie and just the way that they advertised it beforehand, Saw Legacy was the name. Everyone knew Saw Legacy was the name, and they were even using that before they decided to change it to Jigsaw and started marketing the film under that name. To me, it just seems like Saw 9 would be the name of the movie that they use during production, but it's something that they're definitely going to change before the new movie hits. One of the reasons is you just don't want your horror movie franchise to have that long of a number after the title that everyone's familiar with, because people start getting sequel-itis and they're like, okay. And it's just something that becomes a huge issue amongst the fan base and people who are familiar but not really willing to go out and pay money to see the 9th entry in a long-running franchise, especially when the current 8 films are easily available for people to see sometime during the Halloween season if they're going to go out and watch a horror movie in the first place. They don't have to go out and spend money on something they might find is a cheap knockoff or just a cheap cash-in on something that has been running for far too long. Too many people at this point think that the Saw franchise needs to end. I'm not one of them, but putting a 9 in front of the name, as cheap as it might sound, makes it feel even cheaper than going with a name like Jigsaw or some variation of Jigsaw. Another thing I wanted to say here, just because several minutes into this video, and I hope people, I want people to know that while I don't report on it, and while I don't have all of the information, a lot of this is he said, she said, hearsay type of information, I do want to say this isn't the working title that I was told. I was told that they were going to do another iteration of the Jigsaw name, but it wasn't going to be Jigsaw 2. It was going to be something completely different that really sold the concept of the movie and something that allowed fans to get excited. Not Jigsaw 2, but as far as I was aware and as much as I was told, Killing Jigsaw. That's what we knew going into the year. Before January even hit, that's what we knew the movie was going to be called, or at least the idea of what they were going to be calling the 9th film. No idea what that means yet. No idea how that works into the major plot points of the movie, but that's what we knew. That was provocative. That was something I feel like they could sell, and I'm wondering how that's really shaken up. Because there was reports on my end that the creators of the franchise had an idea on lock. They thought it worked with the broader universe, worked as a sequel to Jigsaw, and was really going to sell home, use Tobin Bell a lot, and really drive forward with the franchise for the future. But the report was that Lionsgate wasn't overly happy with the idea, and they had to go back to the drawing board. So that's why we've been waiting several months. Maybe they figured out a new storyline. Maybe they are going with Saw 9. Maybe they understand what the franchise is, who the franchise fans are and what they want. And Saw 9, as I've already talked about, is a really good start there. It's not pandering to new fans. It's saying that, hey, old fans, this is the 9th film in the franchise. This is continuing the exact same story that you've come to know and love, and we're going to make sure that you're the ones who show up and not just new and unoriginal fans. I don't know if that is the smartest decision. In fact, I don't think that that's what they're doing here. In fact, I feel like that's so unintelligent that no big studio would do that. I'm not sure, but that's what we know so far. The one thing I will say, based on what I've heard from the grapevine, people I know on industry forums and whatever, the one thing that seems pretty clear here is, and while without dropping any names, without giving really any hints or anything, it seems like we're going to be getting a director from the original Saw days back. That is a big news drop. I'm not going to name any names, but I will talk about it when we start hearing things. We're going to be getting one of the original Saw movie directors back in a big way to bring this franchise back to its heyday. So that's all I really know, or all I'm really willing to share at this point. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Hope everyone cannot wait for Saw news. Hopefully sometime during this year, during this summer, we're going to start hearing news, speculation, all this other stuff dropping, not just from Reddit, but from Bloody Disgusting and all these other reputable news sources when it comes to horror movie news. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. It's been real.